My name is Andrew McGowan. I'm a musician and athlete who geeks out on fashion, art, and great food. I've spent time working with elite performers, repairing instruments for major symphony musicians, training for marathons, and designing wardrobes from everyone from freshman college students to big city lawyers. Trequartista is the Italian word for playmaker and is used to describe a particularly creative role on the soccer pitch, typically behind the central striker. And as the musical Trequartista, I aim to kickstart conversations about topics and areas that I think are underrated, underdiscussed, or particularly important to a sustainable, high-octane life. This is the Musical Trequartista, the podcast. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be back with you for episode 2 of the podcast. So, I've been chatting with a lot of friends about the European Championships going on right now. For anybody who doesn't watch soccer, it's basically the Winter Olympics of international soccer or international football, depending on where in the world you live. And so basically, it's basically the same format as the World Cup with a couple of specific rule changes that we don't really need to get into about like who of the third place teams from the groups qualify for the round of 16 stages. And it only includes teams from Europe. And so the really beautiful thing about that is we get to see teams like Italy and France and Germany boss it up and do the cool things they do. So today I wanted to discuss some of my thoughts and interpretations and feelings about how the tournament's gone so far and where I've expected things to go and things I've been surprised by, and then look forward at a few things that I'm expecting to see over the next week or so. So I think the first thing to bring up is I'm really surprised at Portugal finishing third in their group. And a lot of that has to do with just the sheer technical ability of so many of their players. I was really surprised to see them even reach the final during the last Euros. And I would be very surprised if they didn't reach the final four of this one. And now seeing them perform in the group stages, I'm a bit worried that they won't. I have a number of players that I really enjoy watching from Portugal, including Renato Sanchez, who's obviously just won the French league with Lille, and then Bruno Fernandes for my beloved Manchester United, the obligatory Cristiano Ronaldo. But then João Moutinho is always somebody who's fun to watch. Pepe is always fun to watch. They've been at the highest level of the game for so long. Even though he plays for Man City, Ruben Dias is a phenomenal defender who's incredibly entertaining. I believe did I mention Ruben Neves already from Wolves? I'm not sure, but he's phenomenal also, and honestly could really grow into more of like Sergio Busquets, Michael Carrick kind of player in the next couple of years, especially if he gets a move to a serious European side. And so and then obviously Bernardo Silva, who's incredible, even though I hate that he plays for Man City, and Diogo Jota has been absolutely incredible this tournament also. And so, I mean, with these absolute powerhouses of players on the pitch, I'm just so surprised that they almost underperformed so much in the group stages. I think Germany really came at them with a chip on their shoulder, but again, they're 2 goals away from being a 2-2 game instead of a 4-2 game, even though that was by a landslide one of the most entertaining fixtures of the group stages. And so I'm just a bit surprised at Portugal. And what's really interesting is their round of 16 game against Belgium will probably be the most entertaining game of the entire tournament because there's so much potential for some of the scintillating, exciting attacking football that we're so used to seeing from so many of these major players. And I mean, like I said, this is probably the best Portugal team I've ever seen, and Belgium's team is, if not the best Belgium side I've ever seen, definitely very, very close. So that's been very, very exciting. The Netherlands has really overperformed. Especially, I was hoping to see more of Donny van de Beek feature for them because, I mean, he made 30-ish appearances for Man United last year, but so many of them were very cameo-type appearances, and I think a lot of that hinges around the fact that the Dutch league was concluded when the COVID-19 lockdown started, and so he had 3 months off, and then trying to get back to fitness was just so different compared to lots of other players who trained through that sort of period. And adapting to the Premier League. It's so different from the Eredivisie in terms of intensity and like not being able to relax for any of the games. I mean, Brentford will come at folks with an absolute death wish for them in the fall and season of next year, and so there's even the relegation threatened sides look to beat every team they come up against and know that if the right chance is there, they will. Look back at Norwich from a couple of years ago. I mean, they were an exciting team to watch. They had some very gifted attackers, and while they were absolutely pummeled, I think they absolutely annihilated Man City in one game. It's like 3-0 or 4-0 or something. Like, I mean, those are always available fixtures if the chance is there. So I think that's part of why he wasn't necessarily so as impactful for that Man United side last season as maybe other folks wanted him to be. And I don't think that just because he wasn't playing means he would be the solution to all problems, even though I think he offers a lot more than our Brazilian friend Fred or some of the attributes that Scott McTominay offers, even though I think McTominay is actually a really gifted player, even if I don't think he's starting quality for Man United. He's if he did half of what Darren Fletcher did over the course of his career, I think he would be more than happy with it, and I think if he had about that level of role, most Man United fans would be incredibly happy with his job in the team. But all that's to say, this Netherlands side attacks so fluidly, and it's so entertaining to watch. Even though Memphis Depay has been objectively wasteful with so many of his chances, the way they play out from the back, this kind of wacky, almost WM formation, 3-5-2 that they run, it looks so entertaining, and there's so much attacking prowess. And Georginio Wijnaldum, even though like I kind of hate him because he used to play for Liverpool, like it's just so epic to watch, and nothing like I would have expected from this Netherlands team, especially like lacking arguably one of the best defenders in the world right now in Virgil van Dijk. I expected Matthijs de Ligt to be an exceptional leader in this team. He was at like 17 for Ajax and was probably Juventus's best defender last year, but he's just been exceptional. I don't have the statistics pulled up, but I mean his clearances and his interceptions have got to be immense. He's just been exceptional. And then Daley Blind has been really effective too, especially even though he's now reaching like an older end of his career. It's surprising to me how underappreciated he was when he was at Man United, because there's a lot he can do from center back that's just really, really potent, and his ball distribution is immense. Everyone always likes to hate on Daley Blind because his time at Man United wasn't all that great, but I mean, the World Cup in 2014, goal of the tournament is Van Persie's immaculate header versus Spain. If you go back to see who's playing that pass, Daley Blind gets the assist for it. So that's all I'm saying about that. I was actually really enjoyed watching the Czech Republic side. They just surprised me a lot in terms of their impetuosity and their insistence on attacking and their intensity, and I really enjoyed it. Croatia really surprised me in a negative sense, and I don't think we really got an idea of what Croatia was really capable of until we saw them play Scotland and watched Luka Modric do what Luka Modric does. So that was really exciting. It was so cool, and it's frustrating that it took that long for Croatia to get going, because I think they have something to offer. Is it as good as what some of the other teams have to offer? Probably not. Wales and Denmark are the obligatory case for that. I think Wales are punching a little above their weight in some respect, but not undeservedly, because they had several very intense games. They have a lot of players that really leave it all out on the pitch, and that's, just great to see. Denmark, I think you could argue the same for, except that I think they have a few more leaders. So many more of the Danish players are playing in Premier League or Bundesliga sides compared to the Welsh players, and one of the nice things about that is, I mean, there's just so much more of the game you see at a higher intense level, and then they have an immaculate captain in Kasper Schmeichel, who I really think is probably one of the best goalkeepers at the tournament, and had an immaculate foundation for like his goalkeeping pedagogy, considering that his father is probably one of the greatest goalkeepers of all time. So, and then they have all of this fervor of playing in front of home fans for the entire group stages, and in basically a martyr in Christian Eriksen. There's so much fervor in this Danish team, but and that really shouldn't gloss over the fact that their attackers have been so industrious, and they've capitalized on so many chances, and they're playing a counterattacking style that's just scintillating, where it's so much focused on the absorption of the attack and hit him on the break. And Højbjerg has been incredible. I can't believe he's only at Tottenham. He's such an immaculate player. I don't know how a larger side hasn't swooped him up either. Like, I mean, even from when he was at Southampton, it was just huge. Funny story, I fully expected Spain to be super boring this tournament, and they were for their first two games. And then I had the time to watch them play. It would have been yesterday or the day before. And you know what? I said, I don't need to watch this. Spain's going to have 80% possession and do freaking nothing. Only to realize later in the day they won the game 5-0. So, understanding now that Spain has the capacity to score goals as a team, I mean, they have so many creative players, and they play a super possession-based, high-octane style, but one of those things is that you got to remember with these super possession sides is a hyper-possessive system is inherently defensive, because you're accepting the fact that if we have the ball, then our opponents cannot score. And so, with embracing that philosophy, there's going to be some level of a lack of attack in that methodology. And so, while I am very preferential to the Alex Ferguson style of, like, let's get after them, that does take a lot of stamina. And so a possession-based system, while inherently defensive, if you play hyper-possessive and win every game 1-0, you still win 100% of your games. And if you're winning 100% of your games, then that puts you in a really great position going forward, obviously, because you haven't lost any games and you probably haven't conceded any goals. And that takes us to England, who have not conceded any goals, but have only scored 2 in the entire tournament. And so it's like, is this the best you have? Especially, and I don't mean to get on a soapbox about this, but I'm going to. Gareth Southgate is acting like he's the most incompetent manager to ever coach the game. He really, really is. And maybe some of his players are freaking exhausted. Maybe. But if that was true, then why is a obviously rushed back from injury, out of form Harry Kane starting every game? Guy looks almost useless. He's clearly exhausted. He's clearly not at quite the level he needs to be at, and he really deserves some time off. I mean, he's looking as tired as Bruno Fernandes. And I will say this right now. I love Bruno. I think he's one of the most exceptional attacking midfielders in world football right now. But the boy's exhausted. He's played like 84 games for club and country in the last year. It's nuts. Like, bruv needs a rest. Probably the same could be said of Kane. Same is definitely could be said of Marcus Rashford. He just wouldn't take a rest if somebody offered to it on like a silver platter. So in that regard, like, I have to ask, like, what's the point, Southgate? Especially with so many like amazing attacking options sitting on the bench. Jadon Sancho's played like 20 minutes the whole tournament. He's one of the most exceptional young players in world football. Why isn't he starting more games? And to be fair, Saka, great yesterday. Played phenomenally yesterday. And Jack Grealish, while I think he's probably one of the most overhyped players in the world, still immaculately good. and performed phenomenally, and definitely is more than likely leaving Aston Villa this year. I'm not in the know, so I wouldn't be the person to quote on that, but I have a hard time thinking they're going to be able to keep a hold of a player like that for much longer. He's just so good. Even if he's not like as good as everybody claims he is. He's not Messi. He's not Ronaldo. I don't even know if Jack Grealish is as good as Wayne Rooney, but he is exceptional, and that much we do know for sure. And so, with all that wealth of talent available, I just don't see how Sancho hasn't played. I don't see how Rashford hasn't played more. I don't see how Dominic Calvert-Lewin hasn't played more. I mean, like, even just like crossing into the box becomes even though crosses are objectively one of the most low percentage to score chances in the game, having Dominic Calvert-Lewin, a younger, fitter, faster center forward than Harry Kane, just seems way smarter to me than trying to lump the ball to Kane, who's not going to play it super fast and basically never presses or counterattacks because he doesn't have the pace to, even if his finishing is immaculate. And so this is the time where I would argue that really what England is lacking is a consistently good, coherent double pivot. And this is probably why James Ward-Prowse really deserved to go to the Euros with England, because I think even though there are so many people who are going to lose it over Declan Rice, when I look at Declan Rice and Calvin Phillips, I don't see a pair that can carry the ball forward for England very effectively. James Ward-Prowse, however, is a much more functional player in the midfield that can do those kinds of things. Even if you wanted to play Dele Alli in a role like that, I think in a double pivot with somebody like Calvin Phillips, who would be able to screen and destroy in the midfield, similar to that N'Golo Kante role, I think England plays better with that pair. And then if you really want to hit teams on the break and score a lot of goals and make this England team look like the attacking powerhouse it could be, I think Kane's got to play as a 10. And I don't think that Raheem Sterling necessarily has a place in that team. Or if he does, it's on the upper left-hand side or the upper right-hand side, depending on the other players that you decide to play with. But the other question, and then you can shoe in Grealish as the 10 in order to distribute the ball better. But again, it's one of those things where England almost has too many good attacking players for its own good, because the front three almost unquestionably should be, in my mind, Sterling and or Grealish on the left, Marcus Rashford up at the 9. I know he doesn't really play there that much for Man United, but in a counter-attacking system where you're really just playing like three pacey forwards that are going to get in behind or create chances for each other and just kind of go all over the place and weave into the spaces that are available. Rashford playing at 9, I don't think is that ridiculous. And Jadon Sancho on the right. I think that's the way it needs to go. And I think you can use Kane as a 10 in that system in a way where you can use his ability to distribute the ball so expertly. I hate on Harry Kane a lot because he plays for Tottenham and because I don't think he's quite as good as everybody cracks him out to be. But that being said, his ability to assist and finish effectively is immaculate. And I don't think he's used to his best ability. And would it be that terrible if Harry Kane scored a few fewer goals in order to probably pick up 1.5 to 2/3 as many more assists than he has right now? Because like increasing his assist output by 50 to 66%, like, I mean, that's so many goals you're adding in the team. And Sancho can create more, and Rashford can create more, and Sterling can create more. And even though I don't really trust Sterling as a finisher, which is completely ironic because he's the only person that scored for England so far at this tournament, it just seems like a way better idea to have that kind of attacking system going on. And then you can staff the defense in a way that makes things actually defensively sound. I think if you wanted to play Stones, Walker, Shaw, and Maguire, I don't think that's a terrible option. Even though I really think Trippier has a place on that right-hand side, but then the question becomes, like, Maguire's effectively undroppable because he's had such an amazing defensive season for United. And then when he plays so well for England, and then the question then becomes, like, do you want Walker in your team or do you want Stones in your team? And I think it depends on who they're playing next to. personally, I'm more of a Walker next to Maguire kind of guy, and Luke Shaw is in such good form that I don't really think you can afford to drop him. And so, looking towards this upcoming match against Germany, I really question whether England has what it takes, because so far at the tournament, especially with how Germany have been playing recently, and granted, I really didn't expect Germany to do as well in this tournament as they've been doing, and that's saying quite a lot considering that they absolutely dismantled Portugal. Granted, there were a lot of own goals in that game, but their match against Hungary wasn't poor either. And so, what do you do? It's really one of those things. But England's defensive frailties, and honestly, they're absolutely flaccid attack going forward in a lot of cases. England, all of England's chances from the last couple of games have been so drab and so lackluster. Scotland's performance was very admirable against England, but England were absolutely dreadful. And it says a lot that, as a neutral watching that game, I felt like England lost. And that's really all there is to it. And Scotland played very, very well, but with the talent available to England, it is abhorrent that they performed as poorly as they did. Changing gears a little bit, Italy, Austria, I have a hard time, based on how the group stages have gone, not seeing Italy make the finals unless they manage to meet France or the winner of the Belgium-Portugal game, or play the Netherlands before they get there. But even then, in a tournament of dark horse favorites, I think that Italy was very underrated coming in, and I don't know that dark horse is a great way to describe exactly their level of prowess, because so much of the following for Italian football has been kind of neglected by the fact that they didn't participate in the last World Cup. But this team is unbeaten in 3 years, and they haven't conceded a goal at this tournament. They played their B team against I don't remember who their previous opponents were. I should have paid more attention to the groups or pulled that up on my phone. But my point is, that was the most one-sided 1-0 victory I think I've ever seen in my life. And I think that says a lot about this Italian team, especially when they played basically their reserves, Verratti and Bonucci, for that match. And so I think Italy is a serious contender going forward for the rest of this tournament. And now I quite honestly feel really stupid for not being as informed about them or as aware of the quality of that team going forward. But I think that's part of what plays into Italy's favor so much. It's coming in, and for so many people, being an underdog team when statistically they're anything but that. They have an immaculate system, a very entertaining, impetuous attack, and just they're fun to watch. What can I say? It's beautiful. And hopefully we'll get to see some fanciness from Insigne and all of those other guys. I'd love to see Verratti play some more, even though I think he's coming back from injury, and hopefully Chiellini is back, but I don't think that's likely at this point. And really the only other team I wanted to talk about in the debrief going forward before I do some of my predictions is France. I think they've been a bit disappointing, and a lot of that is because France B is the second best team at this tournament, but the ability and depth in that team is immense. And I think one of the things that we're going to see, that we saw at the World Cup in 2018, is that France comes into their own when the shit hits the fan, really. And their group stage games in the last World Cup were not super impressive. Go back and check them. It's a couple 1-0 wins and a draw, I believe. It wasn't anything nuts. Part of the reason we remember that France team being so good is that 4-2 final scoreline. And a lot of that is because Croatia played a game and a half more than France did, because all of France's games didn't go to extra time, and all of Croatia's games did. So, I mean, when you're deciding every game on the way to the World Cup final on penalties and your opponents end up not doing that, you're just gassed, especially in a short span of time. And that, especially when like N'Golo Kante and Paul Pogba and Blaise Matuidi are going to run the midfield, you're going to be gassed. And then you've got Kylian Mbappe running at your defense, and then Croatia didn't have as good of a defense as most of the other opponents that France faced in the tournament, so they just got slaughtered. And I think we're probably going to see something like that in this tournament if France come into the form that a lot of people are expecting of them. That's my bet anyway. It really kind of depends on how Deschamps decides to tactically set up the rest of his team, but we'll see. I think there's a lot more we can see from Paul Pogba, even though he's been immense so far this tournament, that it's more so that I just think there's so much, even more levels he's capable of as far as the football he can play and the goals that he can score. I was really hoping he was going to score that distance effort that he missed yesterday against Portugal. But again, this is one of those things where like France have so much talent and depth in their team that they really seem like they can't lose to anybody, even though we've seen them make some really, really immense draws in just the last couple of games. But that's what gives me hope for teams like Portugal and Italy and Netherlands and Belgium, because I really think they stand a chance against this French team if they decide they want to take the game to them. And depending on how their coaches decide to tactically assess this French squad and try to nullify Kylian Mbappe and Antoine Griezmann and Karim Benzema, I think we really can see some serious matches coming up in this tournament, which I'm super, super excited about. So, I'm going to go through and do my predictions for each of the fixtures that are coming up over the next couple of days. And then we're going to... I'm going to make my guesses from there as to who I'm thinking will make the semifinals. And then we'll wrap it up. So, for Wales-Denmark, I think Denmark's got it. And it's not that I don't trust Wales. I think this is actually going to be a really, really awesome game to watch because they're pretty evenly matched teams. But I trust Denmark a little more based on how they've been playing, and I think they might be playing in Copenhagen. And if that's the case, I really have a hard time seeing Denmark lose, especially because they've just been so good on the counterattack. They've been running the midfield just so well. Like I said, Højbjerg has just been so immense this tournament, and quite frankly, they're just tighter at the back. That Danish defense has played so well, and I trust Kasper Schmeichel more than any other keeper in this tournament. So, I think Denmark really have a shot of beating Wales. Italy versus Austria. Austria have been really good. Alaba has really taken to leading this team, this tournament, in a way that I'm really impressed by. And his creation and his defensive attributes are all there. But I don't think they stand a chance against this 3-year unbeaten Italy team. Italy's just too good. Netherlands, Czech Republic. Netherlands. Czech Republic have been great. They outperformed themselves, I think, compared to what a lot of people were expecting. But I don't think they have what it takes to beat this Netherlands side. This Netherlands side is just too free-flowing. They attack so well. They play out from the back so well. They defend so well. There's so many leaders in it. There's so much experience in it. Memphis Depay is probably like riding on cloud 9, having just transferred to Barcelona, even though he doesn't finish chances well enough to really be in that Barcelona team. And I don't really know that that's a great fit for him. But you know what? He's probably feeling great about it. And he's had a great tournament so far. So I think Wijnaldum is the attacker they'll really need to watch out for, but I'm back in Netherlands for that tie. Belgium, Portugal may be the most exciting fixture in this tournament. And I know I said that already, but I'm really excited for that game. I'm just really excited for that game. It looks immense. It looks absolutely immense. Portugal has so many goals in that team. Belgium has so many goals in that team. The question will be who defends better, or it might be who attacks better. If we saw a 5-4 game, I don't think anybody would complain. That would probably be I mean, it's probably going to be our favorite game of the tournament, almost regardless. But I don't know who's going to go through from that one. Both teams are equally capable. I'm hoping a little more for Portugal, just because they have a few more players that I hold dear in my heart, namely Cristiano Ronaldo and Bruno Fernandes. But if Belgium goes through, they'll more than deserve it. They're an incredible side. Croatia versus Spain. Like I said, I think Croatia have a little more to prove, and arguably Spain does too. I didn't think Spain had goals in it. This one could really go either way. Personally, I'd prefer Croatia because I like the upset. France versus Switzerland. Even if Switzerland play their socks off, I really don't think they're going to get past France. France are just too good. England versus Germany. Obviously, I have no opinions about Gareth Southgate and didn't talk about him or his tactical decisions for an extremely long portion of this podcast. And based on your listening, you'd probably guess that I support England. The irony is, I really don't. I really don't. I like a lot of individuals in England's team, but quite frankly, I would love to see Germany trash them and watch them pay for their hubris a little bit. I'm tired of this media tirade of like, oh, only players in England are worth it. Jadon Sancho is one of the best attacking talents in Europe, and the fact that a lot of the English media won't talk about him because he plays in Germany, I think is the stupidest thing in the world. And I think a lot of players for England are some of the most overrated players in the world. And that said, like, that's not to say that they don't have incredible players in their team. John Stones came out of nowhere this season. He was the forgotten son at Man City and became one of the most important defenders in the entire league this season. He and Ruben Diaz were an exceptional pair for Man City. And then Maguire had an immense season at Man United. Made like 50 appearances. It's nuts. They're playing so much. Rashford, amazing year, even though everybody likes to hate on him. And half of that is just because he plays for Man United. Sterling had a great season. I just don't think he really brings it in the paint for England where he needs to. Jack Grealish, amazing season. Harry Kane, amazing season. But are Jack Grealish and Harry Kane the best players in the world? I don't think so. I don't think so. And this false narrative of like, oh, we're going to pick players based on form. Where's Jesse Lingard? Where's Jesse Lingard? And we know that Southgate trusts him because he played an immense role at the semifinal World Cup run a couple years ago. Where's Jesse Lingard? That's my question. We're picking players based on form. What was it, like 10 goals, 5 assists in 12 games for West Ham? I don't see him in the team. I don't see him in the team. I think England will pay for their hubris. I think Germany have a chip on their shoulder. I think it's going to be an immensely intense game, and Germany probably win 2-1. Sweden versus Ukraine. Ukraine really put in a big effort in the group stages, but I've been really impressed with Sweden. I really have. I think Sweden go through. As far as my semifinalists, I think it will be the winner of Belgium, Portugal, Italy, Netherlands, and France. I'd love to see an upset. Currently, my unlikely favorites to win are Denmark. I think that would be incredibly poetic. Well, and this Denmark team have just been so fun to watch because they're so intense, and the martyrdom of Christian Eriksen and all of this push behind it. And I don't know of any major honors that the Denmark national team has won. It would be immense to see them win. So that'd be cool. But I just have a hard time not seeing Italy, Netherlands, France, and then the winner of whoever is victorious of the Belgium-Portugal game making it. Well, that's it for this episode of the podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in, and hopefully you're catching more of the Euros. We'll see you next time. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Musical Trequartista, the podcast. You can find us online at McGowanmusic.com or search Music McGowan on Instagram, and